Mike and Tom are registered with Stewart Partners Global Advisory LLC.
Common Sense Finance with Mike Wiginton and Tom Farrell of HL Wiginton Capital Management, an independent investment and financial planning firm in downtown Jasper. Mike is a chartered financial analyst charter holder, and Tom is a certified financial planner professional. They are here to discuss and give their thoughts on current financial and economic matters. Now, with Common Sense Finance, here are Mike and Tom.
Welcome back. Thanks for joining us again. Mike, I was reading another article the other day about the retirement crisis.
The looming
retirement crisis.
Yeah, retirement crisis, that's right.
People are not going to have enough money. They haven't saved enough money to retire comfortably, and they're going to be in poverty, and we're going to have to take care of them. And it's gotten to the point now where the government said, okay, we got to step in and solve this problem, which is not necessarily always a good thing. So they're talking about mandated retirement plans and things like that. I know you've read some of this.
Well, there are groups that are talking about that. The government hasn't actually said that yet, but there are multiple groups with quite a bit of clout, quite frankly,
Right.
that are offering these proposals. You're right about that.
So I know you've read some of the same articles and you have some thoughts on it. What do you see coming out of that?
Yeah, so first let me just mention that this is another one of those episodes that I mentioned some time back that may be controversial, right? That aren't so much about financial tactics, but here's what I believe and is the reason for making this podcast is that this conversation there's a conversation that's happening. It's happening on a regular basis. I read this every week, it seems like, or every other week in some major financial journal about the looming financial crisis and what needs to be done. And there are all these think tanks and these groups that are well supported, and they're all putting forth ideas, and some of them smack of a government mandated retirement plan. And it all has to do with how the 401k plan has been a failure. It was a bad idea for corporate America to go away from the defined benefit plan and replace those plans with a 401k plan.
Right.
Okay.
And talk a little bit about why. We've talked about this before. Why the defined benefit plan went away. And it's been 30, 40 years since really most corporations did away with them. I know a lot of I guess all federal employees and state employees, there's still some government entities that have those, but as far as private corporations, talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so here's the thing. Defined benefit plans are onerous. They're run by a formula that dictate how much you have to put into the plan, and a DB or defined benefit plan, only the employer puts the money in. Now, there's some changes to that. You could have some amendments where the employees are allowed to put some piece of their money in, but those are minimal at best. The lion's share of the money that's put in is from the employer, and those plans dictate how much you have to pay those employees at a certain date in the future after they retire. And the reality is they couldn't keep up with them financially.
Right.
They couldn't put enough money into them. And then when they started having to report that plan as a liability on their books, it made some of them insolvent. So it broke them. So they moved away. Right. They moved away from those plans and put a 401k plan in place where the participants, the employees, would participate and they would put money in, and under certain conditions the employer would match or put money in on their behalf. And that's what we have, grown up with today.
And it removed the long-term liability that they were really struggling to keep up with from the equation.
It got in some cases they froze the plan and it's still on their books, maybe in some cases, but going forward it removed that burden. That's exactly right. So one of the thing that I have the main problem with is how this whole conversation is framed. All right, and let me just say this: the people that are putting out these ideas that there needs to be a new plan, right, a new type of plan, they refer to problems with 401ks like, participants, employees can get their hands on their money before they retire, so we don't like that. They refer to that as leakage. Okay, participants aren't financial experts, so they have no place in being their own, they're handling money or making investment decisions for themselves. They actually say that. That's a hard one for me to deal with. They don't like the fact that you're not auto-enrolled or that you're not automatically having a contribution rate deducted out of your pay. And in some cases, some of these trial balloons, suggested plans even call for that contribution rate being raised as they go forward in their career.
So they want to force you.
That's correct.
If all this comes to fruition and they get their wish, they want to force you to invest in the account that they set up for you, and you're not going to have a choice.
That's exactly right. So let's talk about who this affects and why. And the two obvious groups are employers and employees. On the employer side, we all know the kind of cost and headaches to comply with any government mandated plan.
Yep.
Now, this is, when I talk about government mandated plans, this is as I see it. I'm taking away from these articles and the information that I'm reading and saying, hey, where's this going, right? And where I see this going, and that's why I'm referring to a so-called government mandated plan, because that's, again, maybe being a little redundant here, but that's the feel that these conversations have, all right? And so in our experience, and we're going to talk more about this, what about most of our clients, our employer clients, they offer very generous plans. What about those folks?
You have to nowadays to attract and to retain good employees. You have to have something out there.
So what's going to happen to those guys? Are they going to have to replace their plan, remove it, and replace it with a new plan that some other outside entity, government or quasi-government entity has dictated to them? So obviously, as I see it for employers, it's all bad. When you talk about employees, I would say it's a mixed bag between good and bad. Because if you're not doing what you ought to be doing to save for your retirement, right, and have some bit of financial independence when you're older, that's not a good thing. So the fact that you're forced to invest money and have money taken out of your paycheck, maybe there's some good to that. And I also want to say, the plans that I've seen, they would allow you to opt out, but only after you jump through lots of hurdles.
Right.
And their thinking on that is, if you put these people in the plan and you stick them with an automatic contribution rate, they're probably not going to go through the hurdles to get out of the plan. And therein lies what I say is the negative for the employee. Is it right for someone to make those decisions for you and to deliberately make something difficult for you to get out of? It is your money, isn't it? And so I don't agree with that at all. So here's my take, or how I see it in terms of how the solution ought to be framed, or how the problem, if there is a problem, ought to be framed. First of all, you ought to recognize that, because it is our experience, as I said earlier, that most of the employers we deal with, they offer retirement plans, and they're generous retirement plans, okay? And if I use just a very simple example, if you take an employee that puts 10% of their pay in, now that's not what we see. I would say that the typical contribution rate would be 3 to 5%.
Yeah.
Maybe closer to 3 than 5. But let's just say that you're doing 10. And the employer matches you with 3%, which is a very typical matching rate that we see. You agree with that?
That's correct.
Okay. Well, the employer's 3 on your 10 is 30%. That's a 30% return.
Without any growth in your own assets.
That's not bad, is it?
Yeah.
But the real problem we see, it's not a fault with corporate America. It's not a problem. It's the fact that the participation rate's very low. Employees don't take advantage of those plans. And even when they do, they don't put in enough. And all these employers that have plans, do you know of one that doesn't offer ample opportunity for investment, counsel, investment, education? I mean, we're involved with that.
Yep.
Okay? So to say, oh, they're not experts, or they don't have the ability to handle their financial affairs, doesn't line up with the facts as we see them in our experiences. Do you have any problem with that?
And not to mention, even the companies that don't offer those, for the individuals, they have opportunity to open an IRA and make contributions to that, $6,000 a year right now. So, I mean, there's ample opportunity to save for retirement. I don't think it's the fact that there's not the mechanism out there to do it. I think it's the personal responsibility to hey, I'm going to sacrifice a little bit today to make sure I have some money put back for retirement down the road. That's exactly right.
And any of these ideas or plans that are being thrown out there that have, in some shape or form, some suggestion that we move back to something like the defined benefit plan, well, that's just foolish, because that's already been proven to be a onerous vehicle, a monster of a vehicle. And so to go back towards something like that, I say is just not sound thinking. Yeah. And then the third thing about this whole argument that just strikes me is wrong is that it totally removes. Nowhere do you see any conversation about whose responsibility is it to save for my retirement. Right? Nowhere the personal responsibility is gone. Yeah. Okay? And I think that's the kind of thinking is what's gotten us into, as country as a whole, into our social and financial woes. Okay? So if I were going to sum this up, I would just simply, a little bit of a repeat of what I said on the front end. These are real conversations that are going on out there, and they're not with obscure people or groups. They're influential groups. And it's enough of a movement to say that I think there's something behind this. And it's not a stretch to me to think that you could be looking at a government mandated plan. Not too many years ago, we had a government mandated healthcare plan, Obamacare. Right. And I remember distinctly after that, various people, unrelated parties, firmly middle class people, not what you would refer to as ultra wealthy people, were just complaining on a regular basis about how their healthcare, their health insurance premiums had doubled or more in some cases. Okay, and so, and if I had to title this episode, this is what it would be, because there's that old maxim out there that sometimes, folks, the cure is worse than the disease. And I think if we go much further down this road, and these folks putting these ideas out, if they're successful, that's exactly the situation we're going to wind up with. So with that said, I'll give you the last word.
Yeah, now we just want to share things like this that may not be, right in front of you. It may not be stuff that you're seeing a lot about, but it could be issues that pop up down the road, and we kind of, we read all these articles and see this stuff and try to stay ahead of it. So we wanted to share that with you. But thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
I just can't believe all the things people say. Controversy. Am I black or white? Am I straight or gay? Controversy. Do I believe God? Do I believe me? Controversy. Controversy.